No one would have believed that in the first years of the 20th century that we were being watched by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as men busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized as narrowly as creatures that swarm and multiply within a drop of water. Yet, across the gulf of space, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. Hey, this is Really Suck, and today I'm reviewing the BBC version of War of the Worlds. I'm sure that everybody remembers the famous first paragraph of H.G. Wells' most famous book, and is scratching your heads thinking, that doesn't quite sound right. And they would be right, it isn't right, because at least half of that paragraph is missing. And that's a pretty good example of what to expect from this series. There are many things wrong with this retelling of H.G. Wells' most famous story, and that is why I'm going to forego comparing it to the very famous and well-written book. I will come back to that comparison in another video. But for now, I will review this TV program based on its own merits alone. So, first and foremost, this is not really a story about a Martian invasion. I'm not even sure why they decided to stick with the Martian elements, as nothing about them is depicted accurately. Oh, damn. Slipped into the book mode again. This is instead a modern period love story shoehorned into an alien invasion. Our main character's name is Amy, played very well by Eleanor Tomlinson, who is easy on the eye and not out of place in a historical drama, and she is the illicit lover of a man named George, who has left his apparently loveless marriage to live in sin with his mistress, and that their relationship is frowned upon by everybody around them because, well, that sort of thing just wasn't done, at least not publicly back in 1904. And if you're wondering where I got the date from, it's because there is a minor subplot about Britain going to war with Russia, and they mention the Dogger Bank incident in which the Imperial Russian Navy attacked some British fishing boats, apparently managing to mistake them for Japanese torpedo boats, even though they were just off the British coast in the Baltic. Though it is later stated that this is supposed to be 1905. Oh well, whatever. Slight discrepancy there. History lesson over, back to the programme. Amy is a very strong, independent kind of girl who is born in India. Score 1 for BBC diversity quotas. After all, this is good old England, so diversity was hard to come by back then. She seems to be a lovely and very clever girl, as indicated by her having a degree and wanting to study for a master's in the natural sciences, which is apparently something she is very good at. Can you say foreshadowing? Then we have George, played by Raphael Spall, as the other side of this love story, a man best described in this series as looking perpetually worried and out of his depth. At first you feel for him, but that quickly turns to annoyance, which is a shame, as I was hoping for some sort of character development, and that we would see him become a stronger person as the programme went on. Next we have Ogilvy, a scientist, and not just an astronomer. Now why would that be? Played by Robert Carlyle. Usually I find Robert Carlyle interesting and worth watching, but here he is just so impotent. He feels like a nobody, and he's treated mostly like a nobody by other influential people that we meet in the programme. And then he just disappears for a large part of the story, only to suddenly reappear nearer the end when it becomes convenient for the plot. He is, though, one of the better characters, maybe the only thing that makes the dreadful future scenes watchable at all. And lastly but not least is Fred, secretary to the Minister of War and George's older brother, who is very disapproving of George's extramarital affair with Amy, and who is trying to convince him to return to his wife. Fred, it turns out, is the most interesting character in the programme, as he is torn between his love for his brother and his strong social convictions of doing what is right and being a man. We do actually see character development with him. He isn't a cookie-cutter character, he actually grows during the series. The two lovers manage to become separated due to the alien invasion and a dog, and while there is a little bit more to it than that, this is, I'm afraid, the most interesting part of the story. They do meet up again later on, but from that point, this turgid mess becomes almost completely unbearable. This is, on the whole, a very boring watch. The first part seems to be doing okay, even with the dumb, shoehorned-in love story, and while mentions of Britain's empire should be important to showing how the mightiest can fall, unfortunately the BBC couldn't leave well enough alone. When we're treated to a speech about how England is the greatest country in the world and how amazing we are, all of which is true, but you get the feeling that that's not what the Beeb was trying to say. If you read between the lines, you get the feeling that this is simply the BBC's left-wing agenda, and they're actually expecting us to be very disapproving of all these mentions of empire. There's a particularly good scene involving Fred that is worth watching out for, if by some nasty, unavoidable chance you find yourself watching this tripe. Another aspect to this show are the flash forwards to a bleak dystopian future which gives away the fact that the Martians essentially won this war and the world is dying due to the red weed which has managed to encroach over everything. These flash forwards are very distracting and take away from the main story to the point that just following the story becomes very tedious. Out of the 3 people I watched this program with, I was the only one that managed to stay awake through it all. My partner was asleep before we even reached 30 minutes of the first episode. If they had only managed to concentrate on the actual story rather than all the unnecessary padding, this could still have been an interesting watch. It would also have been good to hear more about the human story within this terrible event. But the closest we get are moments of mass hysteria due to, well, Martian tripods and the black smoke, or Eleanor Tomlinson wandering around the dystopian future looking for food. There is nothing of the book to be found within these moments. None of the individuals' struggle and the desperation that was just so vividly depicted. Damn, did it again. Spoke about the book. It also seems to have stolen one particular element from the Tom Cruise movie, and that is that the Martians seem to have buried the tripods on Earth 10 years before in the previous conjunction, and only the aliens seem to have come in the spheres. Not cylinders. No. Spheres. And the less said about them, the better. The Martians themselves are very poorly realized and look like rejects from a set of Starship Troopers, and you will wonder how they were able to build the tripods with no apparently dexterous appendages. Incidentally, the digital effects are generally quite awful. It is easy to see why they held up the release of this program. There's also some bizarre geography going on whereby Woking has been placed within short walking distance of the sea. Maybe Peter Harness hasn't spent much time in front of a map. Or maybe, like the rest of the story, he just doesn't care about accuracy, and after having read interviews with him on the subject, I think it's pretty obvious that the latter is the case. This is, at best, an alternate reality version of the War of the Worlds. And what it absolutely is not, just like all the other visual adaptations, is H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. Yet another opportunity to bring this great story to our screens has gone by. And so once again, the wait continues. This is Movie Sucks signing out. If you like this content and you'd like to see more, leave a like, share, comment and subscribe. And if you don't, well, tell me about that too. I will catch you guys on the flip side.